Dr Channa Jayasena is here, consultant in reproductive endocrinology and andrology. Sounds very, very clever, that. Apparently male NHS employees suffering from the Menopause, as it's sometimes called, are being offered special uniforms, bespoke desk spaces and up to a year's paid leave from work to help them cope. So, Dr Channa, very good morning to you.
Hi, Mike.
How's it going?
It's all right, yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting topic.
It is. What about this menopause then? Because it's a new word. I've heard it said, I've heard it spoken. I mean, I suppose I might be of an age where you might say I'm suffering from it. I don't know whether there's a test you can do. But basically men, as a general rule, sort of have hormonal changes as they get older, right?
They do. They're much more gradual. And the other key thing is that it only affects about 2% of men. So actually, you hit the nail on the head. If your general health, things like weight and smoking, etc., can be kept under control, then there are ways you can actually avoid it. So whether menopause is the right word of what to call it is another matter. The technical term we tend to say is testosterone deficiency or hypogonadism.
Yeah, because I'm seeing in this story I'm reading that apparently even in the NHS themselves, they say you shouldn't compare it to the menopause because that would be unhelpful and misleading. Also, a woman might give you a clip around the ear, presumably.
Yeah, I think I do hear a lot of grief, particularly from the female half of the population, about the comparison, and I can kind of get their point. So maybe talking about it as something distinct is probably more helpful, and therefore that will kind of remove that controversy and help us to talk about it, because it is a real condition that does affect a minority of men. Yes,
and how would you know if you were suffering from it, as a man?
So the key things that you should look out for are things like, the bigger ones are sexual ones. So if you stop being able to have erections, if you have a sudden loss of a libido, and then there are less specific ones that can go with it, such as reduction in mood, but also reduction in the amount of body hair you have. But the key things is that it can affect some young men as well, particularly if they've had problems with testicular cancer, anything going on with the testicles as well. And then if you get any of these problems, then it's worthwhile seeing your doctor to get tested.
Right. And what about this business of having a year's paid leave off? Because a lot of women don't get that. If they want to get some maternity leave off, I think they only get 6 months, and then they have to be on half pay and all that sort of thing. It's quite revolutionary, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, because ultimately the things that might cause a man to be ill from this condition can be wrapped into other things like stress and just being very, very unfit. So whether it's helpful to give ring-fenced leave is probably, well, it's probably not my business, but for what it's worth, I probably don't think it's the right approach.
Yes. I mean, are you worried, though, as well, that in your line of work, I mean, do you see a lot of men that think they've got it, but it turns out they haven't?
We do, and the problem is that with the internet, it's like an echo chamber, right? So the thing is that there's a lot of private clinics that I think are driving this as a money spinner, trying to prey on men who put all these symptoms, and the pop-up comes up and they ask a few questions, and they go down to see someone in Harley Street or on the internet version, and they get put on stuff. So we are seeing a lot of men coming back to the NHS and trying to say, well, I started on this stuff, is it right? So it's a bit of a mess actually out there, because there's this movement for men to be tested and to be put on it sometimes when they don't need to. And then the NHS is already creaking, and we're trying to deal with that fallout of trying to tell these men actually what they need to do.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, it's fascinating, though. We must talk again. Dr Channa Jayasena there, consultant in reproductive endocrinology and andrology. So if you're feeling a bit grumpy, you might just be grumpy. Doesn't mean you're suffering from the menopause necessarily.